we chat. And then I say to you, Cam, okay, now go and watch it. But when you watch it, you're going to pay attention to what you felt like during the time we were talking, during the recording, versus what you see and hear. But I want you to watch what you like that is consistent with your personal brand. And Camden, you watch it. Well, there's the buy-in.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we work with other lifelong learners. Yes, we do work with at Tribe and Purpose. But on the show, we talk with them. We could work too. Sir. We could work too. Man, now I've just blown the whole thing. Well, you know what? That goes to show you that, when I get a little cocky, and I'll bring up the words. I thought, I got this. Why would I need to spend the energy to click on a Word document that has probably 100 words on it to put it up on my screen? Because I got this. Daggone it.
Yep, that's all right. That's why I got mine taped to the wall. I don't got to bring nothing up or anything.
That's right. Yep, old school. The young ones going old school. Had to probably hand wrote it, didn't you?
Yes, sir. And wrote it, and it used to be just a torn out page from my notebook, which I also keep. Very old school.
Nice.
Classic. Our guest Stacey is joining us. And Stacey, do you have anything taped up on the wall behind the camera? I'm just curious.
I do. I talk about this a lot, and we might dive into this, but I tell my clients this whole idea of accountability. If you saw my notes, there's a lot of Post-it notes in front of me right now, and it's all this feedback that I've received from my coaches, from my accountability partners. So it's always in my face. But yes, we talk a lot about that and how there is some benefit, silver lining to when you're virtual, because no one can see. Technically, they can't see what you're referring to in front of you.
I do want to talk about that because that's interesting. So you have like positive feedback, like Joe said, Stacey was the best thing since sliced bread. Posted up there, things like that. Or
it's the opposite of that. It's all the constructive feedback of what I'm working on, what I should be thinking about, and that's something that we teach a lot of our mentees or our clients, that this whole idea of, and I know we're going to go there, we're going to be talking about influence here today, and we refer to it as body language, and that's such a muscle memory skill. So you have to almost have the friendly reminders in front of you. Therefore, when you're on these Zoom calls or Teams calls, you know what to focus on for continuous development. It's similar to, I think, like any goals that you write down. If it's in front of you, you won't forget it. But if we don't write it down, we never really invite it in our life, and we tend to forget it because you get caught up in your day-to-day task.
What do you do to not get so wrapped up in those? Because what I'm thinking is, and when we get to the outro, you'll see it. Is I stare over at the outro, but I've joked with you before, Dad, that I don't even read the outro anymore. I have to stare at it, otherwise I'll get it wrong. But I'm not even reading anymore. Because when I actually try to read, I mess things up because it messes up the reflexive brain or whatever it is. I screw up when I do that. Yeah. I could imagine if I had up here, like Dad, we used to have a problem saying curious all the time. If I wrote up there, don't say curious, I think that would screw me up like crazy. Yeah. So what's your balance to, still being present, still being authentic while also taking those tips and feedback?
Because we're really curious about it.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at it before I get on this call. Because you're right. When I'm on the call, I cannot be, right? And you're going to tell I'm totally disengaged because I'm not looking at you and I'm trying to connect with these Post-it notes in front of me. I'll review it pre and post. If I'm watching, like when you do record this and we send it out to your followers, I'll watch it. And then as I watch it, I'm kind of also looking for what am I currently working on. But if you look at it enough throughout the day, not when you're on these calls, because you're right, Cam, you want to be present. You can't have executive presence if you're not present. You start to know what's in front of you. Another trick that I give to individuals, if that really throws you off, say you have meeting notes or maybe it's something more formal and you're presenting with a deck, you have it printed out in front of you. And I'll write reminders of whatever I am currently focusing on from the Post-it note. I'll write the reminder into my notes or into my PowerPoint deck. I do that a lot when I deliver my keynotes. And that way, if I just happen to look at a note, it it's right there. It's that friendly reminder. Because you're right, that's the hardest part about anything that takes muscle memory. We can't multitask and then we're not going to be present here. So it's these methods I've learned over the years that just keep me on track for that momentum that gets created with development. Or you just eventually got to find something that just really works for you. I think as long as we don't stop developing as leaders, and you both know this because this is your show, and I'm sure you've heard so many different methods of how people do that to continue their leadership development.
Yeah, that's so critical, and we do talk about that a lot, both on the show and in the business. That leadership is a skill, and you got to be continuously honing that skill. And you just said something that resonated with me, and it's because I just did recently, a week or so ago, did a new keynote called Command Presence, and you hit on executive presence. I'd love for my note taking and my skill development to see what your perspective is on executive presence versus my perspective on command presence.
Yeah. And I'm curious if they overlap. There's many elements to it, but if I could just categorize into three, that the first one is consistency. I see the biggest challenge with the people that, whether I mentor or are in my audiences, they're not consistent with how they show up Monday to Monday. And I'm not saying you have to be polished and perfect. We still have to have that authenticity there. But Otis, you probably have experienced this too, where you meet someone for the first time and you're like, wow, I really like them and I'm connecting with them, or vice versa. And then you'll see them in something more formal, whether it's virtually or in person, and it's something different. And that's a big push right now that I've been pushing in my third book. It's all about consistency in the hybrid world, which includes, are you in person? Are you virtual? And are you always consistent? Or do people guess which Otis is going to show up? Even which Otis is going to show up during the week. So that's the first one I've really honed in on. Executive presence is, you've got to be consistent. The second part of that ties to it is this idea of building trust through your body language. And the one skill that does that is looking people dead in the eyes or dead into the camera consistently. We always think, oh, well, that's eye contact. Well, we don't even call it eye contact. We elevate it to the next level, and it's really eye connection. And the biggest tip that we share with our clients is only speak when you see eyes. So you don't always have to be staring at someone because that's really awkward and creepy. You don't want to be creepy, but it's really staying connected when you're talking. And that's the only place that people will pick up trust. The third is the constant feedback that we give ourselves. And the only way I know how to do that to build our executive presence is we have to be watching video playbacks, listening to audio playbacks of us being real, live, in the moment. Because there's someone who has executive presence to me knows 100% how they come across. And they feel it in the moment. Versus the executive that I mentor that's never watched a video or audio playback will say to me, well, I've been doing this for a long time. I know what I'm doing. I feel comfortable. My executive team constantly tells me how great I am. And all of that is such false belief, because once you start, even this is like our best friend. Once you start recording yourself, you're going to determine executive presence, no executive presence. And even bigger than that, like if we elevate that perception, does that executive presence of what I see and hear when I watch playbacks, is that correlating with my personal brand? The reputation that I want to create Monday to Monday, or am I creating confusion because these three ways that I define executive presence aren't quite there 100%? Is that somewhat in line with you, Otis, or is that completely off the radar? How you define
no, it's very much in line. So, first off, 3. I wonder why that is.
Right. Exactly. Easy to remember.
Yeah. Mine are, number 1 is self-awareness. And it's very much, there's a lot of alignment in what you said, and the labeling, I think, is probably the biggest difference. So self-awareness, because you got to know who you are before you show up. And, that leads to number 2, which is confidence and authenticity, being authentic in who you are and how you show up. And then those 2 add up to owning the moment. And I think what you talked about in owning the moment is that reflectivity of, well, how did I do? How did I show up?
Right.
To this meeting or that meeting. Because you think of, it's a little bit easier for folks that get up on stage to review a video. A business executive who could care less about social media, that's been sitting in the boardroom, they're not exactly recording. So that's a really interesting challenge to give them.
Yeah. And Otis, let's make it really simple for your followers. Like this is a no-brainer that when I'm virtual, not all the time, but there's certain conversations, I'll just press record. I place it below my camera. You have no idea I'm doing it. And really, for anyone that out there that's saying, oh, but it's confidential, you're just recording yourself. It's your eyes and ears only. And what I love about, I'll do a combination of both. I love doing just audio playbacks because that way I'm really listening to my tone of voice, my word choice versus what I thought I did. And would I trust myself? Would I want to listen to that? Can I follow that? And it's such an easy component to do. I was working with a CEO a couple of months ago, and he's so genuine when he's in his natural environment, hanging out with coworkers he's comfortable with, his friends and family. You get him in a high stakes situation, he becomes someone completely different. So when he came to me, he said, I want to be consistent. I want my employees to feel who I really am. So I said to him, record your weekend. Just randomly record time with your grandchildren, your family. We watched the playback. And when he watched it, he said, I want that, I want that, I want that, when it came to his body language and his messaging. So that's what I coached him on, to bring more of that into when he's on these big stages or he's in his investor meetings. But that's a lot of my team. When we talk about Monday to Monday and executive presence, we're talking, how do you show up even with family and friends? That this isn't something that executive presence, you only have it when you have to present at the board meeting or present at the big sales conference, whatever it might be. It's really starting to take a look at who are you all the time. And the more you can tap into that natural self, sure, there's going to be adaptations you do when you're in front of an investor team or a board meeting, but there's still cores to communication and executive presence that will have you more influential when you can start making adjustments in all communication. Not this idea of turn it on and turn it off, because that jeopardizes, Otis, how you say commanding presence, and that is authenticity. We start really jeopardizing that when we're trying to turn it on, turn it off.
Could you talk more about that? Because I think that's such an interesting thing of the authenticity, and then there is some natural variation for different situations. You want to change your messaging a little bit to talk to the right crowd. The term that comes to mind is, I think, election year, the code switching. We always say that about politicians and stuff. And it's but there's a certain level where I talk to folks different, from different backgrounds and those kind of things. I think of myself coaching rugby. If I coach the little kids engage on Saturday, like I coach the U of A boys, they're going to leave. Their parents are be mad that I'm swearing at their kids so much and all those kind of things. Right. It's it is a different group. But then at the core level, it's I'm still the same coach. Could you talk about kind of teasing those two pieces out? Because it feels really disentangled or really entangled there.
Yeah. I want to give you a visual because I think everyone could follow us on this one. Let's say you've been playing golf, tennis, you've been downhill skiing for years. And suddenly someone comes to you and says, well, I know why your golf swing is off. And they'll tear it apart, right? They'll say, swing a couple of times. I want to see your style, and then I'm going to rebuild it. Because every athlete, however they practice, we're in college football season, however they practice Monday to Friday is how they're going to perform the game on Saturday. But on Saturday, they're taking the knowledge they got from all that practice all week long, and now the core skills of how to throw the football, how to tackle, they adapt it to the opponent. They adapt it to the game on Saturday. And that's what I mean by, if I'm going to teach you, reevaluate how you come across as a communicator to make sure you have consistent influence, I'm going to look at your natural style. For example, brevity. We all need it. So no matter who you're talking to, you need brevity. But as the coach to the, you said soccer? Rugby. Rugby. To the rugby team, to the boardroom, you're changing your style, perhaps. You're more to the point in the boardroom. You're not goofing around as much. Here you have to use more examples with the coach, but you still have brevity in both. Because if you don't have brevity, kids and adults aren't going to understand you.
Yep.
So that's what I mean by there are core skills, like look people in the eyes all the time, no matter who you're talking to, but you're adapting your messaging, you're adapting maybe your tone of voice, you're adapting the types of stories you use. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the hard part. So we'll always teach the core skills first, and then we elevate that practice and teach you how to take your core skills like an athlete and how do you adapt it to the situation you're in, to the outcome you want to reach, and number 3, who you're trying to influence. So that just shows you when we're talking influence, there are layers to it. There's so much more than my years of experience, my LinkedIn profile, and the good feedback I always receive. Like that stuff, I don't think it works anymore, especially because hybrid world's gotten us to communicate in a much more complicated world.
Yeah, and I wanted to, you touched on something, if I can formulate it for a minute here. The toning, changing how you present and how that changes how you are inside. And here's where I'm going with this, because this is, Camden and I used to coach rugby also, and we've seen this over the years in a sports arena where the better team plays down to the lesser team. They don't maintain themselves. And I would love to explore that thought with you in the sense, not necessarily in the sports. If you want to talk sports, we can always talk sports. Don't get me wrong there. But in that human interaction of it and how that changes, because are you playing down too low?
Right.
Maybe that's the way of explaining it. What thoughts on that?
Yeah. It's knowing when I've got a CEO who hops on a Zoom call with me and wants to do some small chatter first, likes to socialize, likes to joke around a little bit, versus the other CEO, not the place I'm going to go with that person. And they are, what are we doing today? Give me the agenda. And a lot of it is taking a step back before the conversation. And I call it identifying your listeners' why. And really identifying their why. Like, why are they having this conversation with you? Why is your topic important or not important to them? Why is this conversation happening now? Why does their current experience or past experience, how does that apply to what they're expecting to get out of you? And it's going back, Otis and Camden, it's going back to like 80-20 rule. That friendly reminder, if you speak 20%, they speak 80. Now, how do you get them there? Is anytime I get on a call, one of the first questions I'll ask, let's say a potential client, maybe it's a sales pitch, I'll ask them, what is going on in your company right now that led you to want to have a conversation today? Well, that is so open-ended. I want to open up the floodwaters. And as they're telling me what they're telling me, I'm capturing every possible key point, because their key points are going to lead me to formulate the next open-ended question to dig into deeper. And the more you sincerely, and I know this sounds so common sense, the more you make the conversation about them, whether they know it or not, they're making it so much easier for you to have influence on them, because they're telling you what they want, what they need, not what your agenda said. I'm not saying don't come prepared to meetings. I still always come prepared, but I can't tell you the last time I actually went off of my agenda. I might start with the first point I was planning on, but after that, it's all over the place. But it's about—
Sound familiar?
Does that sound familiar for both of you?
Show.
Now you have to have the courage. I was doing a keynote last week, and I was telling the audience that the biggest step you could take today is the courage to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And that courage to be vulnerable is first being willing to see and hear yourself through the eyes and ears of your listeners. And then second, opening up the conversation with an open-ended question and just seeing where it goes. Now that's going to take some mindful listening along the way. It's another leadership skill, though, I think all these steps, they earn you the right to say, I really am a leader with executive presence.
I think there's an interesting piece there of the again kind of going back to what we were talking about, right after the intro there, of like the kind of the notes and the feedback of this idea of communicating like that there's this kind of push and pull of like being reflective and understanding the things that you're trying to improve, then while also you have to have that kind of free flowing. You can't have the safety on to go out there and talk like that, because you just never quite reach that authentic point, like you're saying, Stacey. What would you say is maybe a little bit of the balance with that, or does that just go back to the preparation? Because if you're not just being present, if you're not being authentic, whether the script is perfect or not, it's not going to work as well as if you find a way to say those things naturally and to really be present in that moment. What are your thoughts on trying to find that balance, or preparing for that might be a better way to look at it?
Practice in your day-to-day conversations with family, with friends. This is where I want you to think like an athlete. Like, there's no way I can hop on this call with you and suddenly not use an suddenly practice eye connection, but I haven't been doing it all day. And that's the piece people are missing, where my team and I are really trying to convince people this: if you're going to elevate your influence, if you're really going to have influence Monday, you've got to be all in. It's been the misperception for so long. I know when I was in corporate world, I practiced the night before a presentation. I practiced before that sales pitch. Now, if I look back, I was doing it all backwards. Versus Camden, if you think about how many conversations you're going to have with Otis this week, with your family, with your friends, and then on the weekend, and just taking moments to think about how can you change the conversation with them. And I can hear your listeners right now saying, oh, well, then it's not going to be me and it's fake. I'm like, well, but you're not making a 360-degree change here. It's these real subtle changes. Mm-hmm. I was just on a team training. I have instructors that go into companies and they do workshops, deep dive workshops on the topic of influence. And we were doing our quarterly training before this call. And we were just giving examples of some of the new material that we're trying out. And one of the instructors said, they go, this is how oblivious my family is. I totally used this organizational tool that we use to help people put messages together on the fly. She says, I totally used it on my family this weekend, totally influenced them to do what I wanted to do this weekend versus what they thought. And they had no idea I was pulling it on them. And it's just interesting how, if we dissect this week, how many conversations we're going to have. The good news when it comes to elevating our influence, every interaction we have is an opportunity to practice. Mm-hmm. That's the power of it. And I think too, Otis, I'm thinking even with some of the things that you probably change, it's not you have to get 2:00 every Tuesday. You have to practice this for an hour. We're trying to convince our listeners, our clients, be conscious that you can be practicing and developing how you show up every day as much as you want to. It's about being conscious, though, that how many calls you have, what could you practice on each call? Mm-hmm. When could you record it? When could you ask for feedback? So taking advantage of, wow, we are in the world of virtual and in-person, so we have more opportunities now to practice than we've ever had before.
I'm curious in the same vein there, because I'm thinking, we've been going with our sports analogies. I'm thinking of, with rugby right now, we're in the preseason, and we have this moment, and usually it is just the passing mechanics, and there's some basic things, but there's always this moment with freshmen or transfers that come in where you get to look at them and you go, I'm going to break your pass. You're not going to know how to pass a rugby ball for 2 months. And on the other side of it, you're going to be so much better. But it's like, I'm going to break your pass. That's the only way to fix it. Yes. And it works for them because I said that, a month ago in August when we started training camp, and they just played their first game this last weekend. The real season is in spring. It's like they've got all this time to ramp up and to have a broken pass and to get through that. I'm guessing that folks you talk to in their business, they're not too fond of the idea of being broken at communicating for 2 months. What Correct. Is your process of finding the space to break that, or finding a way to implement that into somebody's life without like tanking their business or something?
Yeah, it's really the video and audio playbacks, because just hearing us talk about it with our clients, I think they'd really freak out. And it's the other thing that is our claim to fame is we never say it's black or white. We don't say you have to do it this way. Instead, we'll say, all right, Camden, we're just going to have a conversation with me, and I'll have you record yourself in the moment and just talk to me like you did your client you just had on a call. And we chat, And then I say to you, Cam, okay, now go and watch it. But when you watch it, you're going to pay attention to what you felt like during the time we were talking, during the recording, versus what you see and hear. But I want you to watch what you like that is consistent with your personal brand. And Camden, you watch it. Well, there's the buy-in. Mm-hmm. And then I start coaching them and I'll say, well, this time when we record, let's try this. Just this one thing. Let's try it. And we try it a couple of times. And when they nail it is the buy-in, Camden. Similar to the kids that you're coaching, they'll say, oh my goodness, I'm never going to do that again. Because Otis, it's self-awareness. Mm-hmm. And I think without self-awareness, we don't know what we don't know. We can never change anything. And it's their constant seeing of this. It's the way that we coach to let them know we're not changing you. We're just going to make you better if you want to. The other thing, Camden, so I cannot tell a lie, the people that come to us really want it. Mm-hmm. So, we're not going into companies and we say, okay, everyone has to take this workshop. We're like, we only want volunteers. we only want, at this point in my career, people who are like, I'm all in. I know I need to make a change. I just don't know what it is.
That's so true. Yeah, I'm snickering because it's not like you can force them. I always remember one of my clients, man, that was 3-4 years ago now I think about it. One of our early clients for our leadership program, the Greenberry Leadership Program, they hired me and then put a couple of their managers in it. And about a month into the 2-month course, so we're about halfway in, they finally said, hey, Otis, because I always do a little bit of the chit chat too. No surprise there, right? To start off.
Right.
And they said, hey, Otis, can we just take a few minutes? We've been talking and we wanted to ask you a question. I was like, sure. Yeah, why not? Go ahead. I said, why are we in this class? Have we been doing something wrong? Are we going to get fired? Is this like part of our performance improvement plan? And I was like, oh, shit.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that was no, you're in this program because, the executive leadership team sees the potential in you for promotion and growth and all that. Yeah. That was change their perspective on the class. Let's just say.
Sure. And we really work closely, probably like you do too, both of you, with our clients to really make sure the communication is of what's going to happen. One of our buyers, he's a VP of sales. We went in to train a sales team and he said it best. This was an in-person workshop we did. And he stands up in front of the group to introduce the workshop. And he said, I'm just going to give you a heads up. You're going to lose yourself. You're just going to totally get lost. And you're going to watch these playbacks and you're going to say, it's not me. I'm worse off. Maybe I'm better off, but you will lose yourself. Here's what's great. If you do the work with an open mind, and you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, you'll find yourself, but it's going to be a whole better self. Camden, playing off of what you had said. And it is tough because I think anything that takes muscle memory, you kind of step in this valley. And the first time you step in it, you're pretty deep. And you got to sweat through it. It's uncomfortable. Our body doesn't like to be uncomfortable. Three of us, we know if you do the work of the discomfort, it's always greater on the other side. And then you're going to be going for a while, you're going to be practicing these skills, and then you're going to step in another valley. But I always tell my clients, as long as you're continuously practicing, the next time you step in the valley, it's not as deep. You don't go down as deep, and you get out quicker.
Mm-hmm. And actually, that's a area that I would love to dive into, because we talk about making these changes, breaking and rebuilding things and all that. We very, very big, and obviously there's some aspects of that. If you get it, it's like, oh my gosh, you are so inconsistent and all this. Like, I'm sure there are those moments where it's like, all right, we're going through it. There's also the kind of the sustaining of it, sustaining these types of changes, continually looking for new ways to improve and stepping into, as you put it, that valley more briefly each time. Could you talk a bit about how you help folks to sustain that? Because I think to me, at least, I would see the problem of, it's kind of like, we always use the vitamins example, Dad, of it's like, it's a removal of a pain. Or are the vitamins working? I don't know. I guess it stopped working, but I'm not paying attention to it. the pain, because the pain's gone, right? And I can see a similar kind of thing there. It's like, well, now I'm a better speaker. I don't notice the things. So how do you keep finding those and keep making those, micro improvements?
Yeah. Momentum and repetition is the key to our client success. We'll create the momentum and repetition when we work with them. And a lot of it is some of the things we've been talking about, making it part of your day to day, thinking about how every conversation is an opportunity to practice. So the momentum is key. They start to see the benefits of the work we do with them to keep, I see it like it's almost like they're on the diving board and we help them propel forward, right? But then to continue to swim. The second is I tell everyone, there's no way I can do this by myself either. And it is finding people that are going to hold you accountable. It might be someone in your personal life and your professional life. I'm guessing we all have someone in our personal life that can't wait to give us feedback. You open up that can of worms, they'll be there for you. Plus, they know you in your natural state. That's what I like about the personal. And as far as professional, you just need to find an accountability partner who is always going to show up for you and one that's going to make sure that you stay on track. So it's like a personal trainer. If any of your viewers have had a personal trainer or workout buddy, they're at your doorstep at 5 a.m. to work out. You're probably going to get out of bed and go there. I don't think the work that we do around changing our behaviors and how we show up through our communication, I don't even know how I would do that by myself. So it's the accountability partners that are key. And you'll find that this idea of elevating our influence is a journey. There's never an end mark. There's never a destination. Along the journey, you're going to find different accountability partners because suddenly they can't accommodate you to the next level that you need to go. That's right, Otis. I guess a part of leadership skills too is you're not able to do this by yourself because you're right, Camden. Life gets in the way. And it's always easy to say no to holding ourselves accountable, but what's the cost to saying no? I came across a quote last week, and I don't remember who. I wish I wrote it down. It was off of a podcast, and I didn't get the name of it, but it was something that said, the discomfort of growth is less dangerous than the heartbreak of regret. And that's that idea of saying no to, it's your development. Like no matter what's going on in the world, personally or professionally, there's always one thing that we have control over, and it's our development.
Yeah. Where you spend your time, right? Are you spending your time doing the, spending your time improving yourself? Or are you spending your time,
right,
I don't know, chasing squirrels or something like that? So,
going through Facebook, just hanging out on Twitter or Instagram.
I'm reading the book Essentialism.
It's a good one.
Golly, that thing. Just learn to say no. I was taking my little, I do a quick little in between calls walk. And the last one I just did a few minutes ago for the show. And I was like, what do I need to say no to today? Looking at my calendar, thinking about what's on the schedule so that I can, cut things out so I can focus on what's important instead of just saying, sure, come on, jump on my calendar, talk to me.
It's so true. And it's still needing, as powerful as all that is, I find that what we're talking about here today is really common sense. It's not common practice. And what's not common practice is always the hardest to stick with. The other thing that I do, Camden, I was taught early in my career by my coaches, what we write, we invite in our life. That I know if I literally take a Post-it note every morning. It's the first thing I do when I sit down. In addition to my calendars and everything, I'll write down 3 action steps that I have to do today. I have to get them done today. I can't carry them over to tomorrow. And their action steps, depends on the day, that will either grow my business and or grow me. So that way, again, it's another thing that's right in front of me when I get caught up call after call or whatever I'm doing that day. Just another tip that might help your followers.
Love that. There's one piece there I thought would be.
Hey, Camden, look up. Yep. Is it like right here?
That's right. That's right.
No, I was going to say on that. Talking about, Dad, in leadership and communication, we talk about like the power of I don't know. And talking about saying no there, Dad, as you put it. Stacey, what does that do to the influence? Part because the fear that we all have is, it's if I say no, if Stacey wants to hop on a call after this, and I say no because I'm too busy, because I'm this, and I'm trying to protect my time, then that's going to erode our relationship, and we're not going to be able to do anything else. She's not going to share the podcast episode when it comes out. Whatever the things are, right? We're scared about how that's going to erode our influence of those people.
Right.
What's the reality there?
Wow, that's the power of the words when it comes to influence. And if I'm saying no, I'm going to pull in the benefit, the reasoning. If there's a benefit to my listener, if for example, this is a common one. Can you send us a contract by 5 o'clock today? Can you send us a proposal? That's it. Can you send us a proposal by 5 o'clock today? And I'm on the call, but the right people aren't on the call, or we're running out of time. I still don't have enough information. Then I will say to them, if I send it by the end of the day, I know I'm going to miss the mark. And now I'm wasting your time. To make sure I honor your time and help with your decision-making process, because that's really the way I like to build a partnership, is to understand what you need, not what I need. May we schedule, and then you come up with the action step. But just saying no or not, that's not even possible. I don't have time. Time's your benefit. Time's not their benefit. Tying back to when we were talking earlier, your listeners, why? Like the more you understand them, the more right on what's important to them, you'll be able to get that right benefit for them. Even in my emails, I'll do that. I had someone last week, they wanted to get on the call. Oh, they wanted to get on a call for us to train their executives in 2 weeks. I'm like, no. Can you imagine going in with a professional golfer, hasn't had training in a while, and 2 weeks before the US Open, I'm going to change their golf swing? No way. And instead of responding to the email, I thought they're not going to understand this in an email. I called them and I explained why you would not want to bring us in. So it's just taking a step back, because influence really is two things, at least how we define it. It's body language and messaging. Both of them have to be consistent Monday to Monday.
And that's so true. And great decision process to, you can't do this in an email or Slack chat or anything like that. This needs to be a discussion. I think that's the decision point. The lesson learned there is because, emails are very much one way. Any kind of text message, right? They're very much one way. And whereas a discussion, you can pick up the tone, the inflection, and you hear it, even if it's just a phone call, not even a video. You still hear it, and that's so important.
Yeah. Or how many times have you? Tell me I'm not alone. I'll start writing a response to a client's email that's a little complicated, and I'm about midway through. I'm like, forget it. This is so going to backfire on me. So instead, even if we remember what phone calls were, even if I pick up the call and I just leave a voicemail, and I'll say, if I send this email to you, it's really going to complicate it. Do you have 10 minutes? Now I have to make sure I stick to 10 minutes. Do you have 10 minutes for me to just walk this through? And usually there's rarely a time they won't get on a call. We'll do it in 5 minutes. And I might joke about, this was so much easier than trying to send an email, because now I have to throw the benefit, Camden, not saying no, but now I'm taking up their time, asking them to get on a call. But I also will say in that voicemail, I want to honor your time with a 10-minute call versus running the risk of going back and forth in email.
That caveat's key.
Our words.
Yeah.
That caveat's key about the going back and forth in email. I mean, goodness gracious, how many times have we all done that?
Your time is wasted too. And how many of us get to the end of the day and say, oh, I have so much time on my hands. I have no idea what to do with this extra time. None of us have it. So I think this is maybe another piece of executive leadership or executive presence, is taking the lead on how can you take this interaction, this conversation, and what's going to be the smartest way to manage it for both of you.
Did you have something,
No,
Cam? Because
I got one. It's more of a
we were in
pondering.
that.
So if you have a stronger one, mine might be off the rails a bit.
Mine's a little bit off subject in this the path we're going. So I'm going to pull us back up out of that rabbit hole and point to this one over here.
Okay.
It's because it was a comment, and I don't remember if I read it in your bio or something like that. It was about titles, and I would love to get your perspective, or really, was there like a catalyst, a moment that happened that you said, "Oh yeah, okay," because I can think of one
Yes.
that happened for me in that sense, post Army time. But I'd really love to hear your perspective on that.
Is it my comment about title doesn't necessarily determine your level of influence?
Yes,
Was it
that's
around
it.
that?
Yep.
And I can only speak from experience. There was one in particular that literally happened 2 weeks ago. I just got done managing a senior leader. It's a large firm. And the partner, who is this person's internal coach, we do post calls after the mentoring session. And it's a big deal because the mentee spends 3 months with me, and it's not easy. It's very uncomfortable for them. And then to see their growth, that's a big celebration. And I get all excited for them because they've done the work, but the leader doesn't necessarily always know how much work, right? Because they might not be involved as I'd like them to be. We get on a post call. I'm sure you can relate to this. And the person I mentored, just so polished, comes up here and so authentic and ready to go. And the partner comes with, he looked like he just rolled out of bed. I have no idea what was going on with the hair. He had a tight t-shirt, white t-shirt that you would like, men, you wear it underneath shirts sometimes, right? And then all I see is his head and I see a ceiling fan. And he's like rubbing his face and he's leaning and he's looking all over the place. And I'm like, you just spent investment, not just dollars and time, on this person who you want to be the next partner. And this is how you're showing up. And I can go over and on how many times a leader will show up here wanting us to enhance their team's communication. When I'm thinking, you should be in that class too. You could use it. Or I've worked with many times where the executive's assistant has more influence than they do. And I'm wondering if this is what happens. You reach a title, you earn it. I'm not saying, you work hard to be that CEO, you work hard to be that business owner. And there's this mentality of my years of experience, my badges of honor along the way, my LinkedIn profile tells you I'm influential. And the other thing that happens, at least going off of what executives tell me, they'll say, well, no one ever gives me feedback. The feedback I've received over the years is how great I am, good job, nice work. And when you reach a certain level, a certain title, less individuals are likely to tell the CEO, the VP, the CFO, the truth of how sometimes they come across. Now, don't get me wrong. I get to work with some CEOs that are top of the top and we just take them even higher. But that's really where it came through. Over the years of doing this work, I started to realize, gosh, title doesn't mean you're influential. And that's tough to hear.
Yeah.
But I think too, if you're at that level, you owe it to yourself to make sure that you truly are. And that's through some of the steps, the action steps we've already talked about.
Yeah, I learned it. Learned it in the Army first off, which is interesting because everybody knows what your position is. Very, it's worn on the uniform.
Sure.
And learned it both in the real world, living it, and with trying to think of how to describe them. Other folks, we'll just call them that. Other folks, and just because the guy might be the chief, let's say, and doesn't mean he's the one who's driving the train. And then when I got out of the Army, for me it was that the first networking thing I went to, and I was working for Lockheed Martin at the time, so I had no clue what I was doing. I'd probably only been out for a month or two, and I came back with some business cards. And I remember telling my buddy, showing him, look, this dude's a CEO. I talked to a CEO. And he's like, hey, dude, he's CEO of himself. Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. So, yeah, I got two kinds of that whole title thing. It's an interesting thing to see that, and I think there's an art, and I'd love to discuss this a little bit. There's an art of identifying the person in the organization who does have
Yes.
the influence. Could you give us some insights to that?
Yeah. You're reading my mind because there's times I can walk into an organization. I might not be working with the CEO or the executive team, and I can just tell. I can tell the power of that leadership. There was one recently, and it was training all their executive team and then one level below that. And once the door was shut in that training room, they were all in. Titles had no meaning. They were all in the same playing field. Well, then I get to meet the CEO. And I thought, this would explain it. He's a huge supporter. He came in midway through the day and said, all right, since you're investing this time, what are you all going to commit to? And let's put a plan together on where we're all going to follow up with each other. And that takes seconds, right? So you definitely can tell what type of leadership is in a company or within a team just by how everyone else behaves. Or if I watch a leader walk into a room and how everyone respects it. They command the room. And not in a negative way. Not in when I think back to my grade school teachers and the German teacher would walk in and everyone would just be like scared to death of her because she was just true German. I feel like I can say that because obviously the name Hanke is 100% German. Not that kind, but just someone who walks in the room and you're like, okay, they're here. I know I'm in good hands and I'm willing to at least listen because they seem to always know how to just put me underneath their wings and let me follow.
That's funny. My German teacher very influenced on me.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
me too.
Frau Bungars. Frau Bungars.
I was going to say they really, that must be their chief export over there. We talk about the cars and stuff, but those angry German ladies they send over to teach us how to speak German. There's a lot of them.
Yes, we could hear her coming down the hallway, and you were in your seats before she walked in.
Yep.
Because you would be the spotlight during that class if you weren't. She would drill you on all these German words that I could not pronounce. And I still have PTSD from it.
The shared experience is great.
Right. I'm glad I'm not alone.
There's one other piece on this, and actually it was the one I was pondering. So I'm glad you had a good question there, Dad, because it ties into what I was thinking about there. But the idea of like scaling influence and the idea that, what we're talking about, it's like just take the easy example of the email. The email, obviously I can email more folks. If I'm getting on the phone with everybody now, that's taking up more time in my day. I can't talk with as many people. Those nice face-to-face, you can't always do that if you have the big company and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that I think is interesting there is how much of that influence degrading, whether it's good or not, of course, I think we'd all agree that, they shouldn't go this way. But as far as why people act like that is just like a factor of the population, basically. And what I mean by that is the comparison, Dad, we've talked about this before. Like you could say you go to New York and everyone's all angry. It's like, well, yeah, there's so many people. You can't be nice to everyone around you. You go to small town Texas and they could all smile and wave and I could stop and talk to you. Because I could stop and talk to you. I'm only going to see 2 people today. So I could stop. We could have a whole conversation, right? There's this like factor, this very real factor of the population size. Do you think that's what causes CEOs to maybe tighten up a bit because they are not able to scale influence the way that they would like? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, because in that case, I'd be coaching a CEO how to be very influential in the people right below them, because they're going to be a reflection of the CEO, right? So that relationship has to be very, very tight. Then beyond that, it's when someone sees you from afar. I use the phrase, you are always under surveillance. I mean, 24/7, we all are. We're always being, and I don't say that in a weird, awkward way that we're always being watched, that, on Facebook. That's not what I mean. But you always are being seen. That's why this is so critical, because this is the eyes and ears of your listeners. For someone that has such a large scale, Now it's going to be in who's making your post on LinkedIn if you're not doing it. Right? You better make sure that that person speaks the same language. So there's more of a tight relationship with the people that are right in your circle that are now going to be your voice. Because they're going to be a reflection of the CEO. And that is why I think anyone that gets higher up in a corporation, it's harder and harder to be influential. You have to work that much harder at it. And unfortunately, they don't, because they don't realize their influence is either coming through or not coming through the people that work directly with them. We're mirrors. Look at it that way. You know, and as parent, I'm not a parent, but Otis, you know, is prime example here. You're a mirror to Cam. You've always been a mirror to him. And we forget that. That's what I mean by we're always under surveillance. I tell the CEO, you know, the minute you walk into, pull up on your parking lot, if you're at a situation where people are coming back to your offices, they see you. And the higher up you go in an organization, the more they're wondering, well, how come Camden got to be the VP? How come Camden got to the CEO? What is he doing or not doing?
Oh, that's great. And I'm sure you can hear the cuckoo clock going off
that's all
in
right.
the background. Yeah, awkward. You should have just rambled on a little bit longer, because I'll just keep rambling on while Mr. Cuckoo. I should have done my cuckoo signal.
I know. Yes. I was going to say it's 11 a.m., so you got 11 cuckoos coming also.
I know. And then we got to play and it's German too. So hopefully this isn't a trigger event for you, Stacey, because that's a German cuckoo clock. Yeah, which leads me to what I learned. And I could probably make a joke about the cuckoo clock, but I'm not, because I think this one is, this is a foot stomper for the show. This isn't just I got that, tick the box. And that's the record conversations. What a simple and easy thing to do that we could all do just to get a little bit better every day and go, I said that? What the? You know? So that's what I learned today, is just record conversation. I'm going to record a conversation with Miss Suzanne this afternoon and play it back for her. I tell you that. I'll get in trouble with that one though. That's Stacey. That's Miss Suzanne's my wife. So,
she'll be a great coach for you. I'm sure she'd be more than happy to coach you.
She's been doing it a long time.
Thanksgiving will never be the same for the two of you.
Camden, how about you? What'd you learn? Well, one, kind of building on that, I was thinking I've been filmed a handful of times coaching rugby, and I've gotten timed a bunch, which is another tricky thing. But it's like, okay, I think I might be filming my engaged coaches this fall as we talk about scaling and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I think I'm going to be filming them and passing that lesson along, because that'll be big. But no, and I do have a joke one, so I'm glad you didn't do a joke, Dad. We always joke about you with your squirrels. I get lizards here because I'm in Tucson. I had a lizard about this big just sitting on my window right here, and that's a first for me with this show. And I am so happy I was able to bottle that up inside until this moment where I could share with you guys, because I was staring at that guy and trying not to, and oh my gosh, what a test.
Is he still there?
I see him. I got a pallet right there. He's moved over to the pallet now. He's just hanging out.
Stacey, how about you? What'd you learn?
Two things, Camden. I love the analogy. I haven't heard it the way you put it when you're coaching rugby, of how long you've been tearing them down. I'll just use it loosely here in August, and what you see as a result, because it's so what we do. And Otis, how you define command presence. And I just like the word command, because that's really what executive presence is.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Stacey, how do folks find you, see what you've got going on next?
Yeah. Well, what we've got going on next, book number 3, is right around the corner, end of October. It is coming out. It's Influence Elevated, Maximizing Connection Monday to Monday. It's 4 years of research of how influence has changed, and now what do you need to really do to break through. All that info, and we throw out a lot of free resources out there. It's on our website, Stacey with an EY, at Stacey, HANKEINC.com, or just get connected with me on LinkedIn. You'll get a lot of resources off of there too.
Awesome. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us today and taking some time out of your schedule.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to meet both of you. I love that you got the duo team going on. Both my sisters are in my company, and there's something to be said when you can make this work. It's not easy, but when you can make it work. So big congrats to both of you too. And thank you. Thanks for trusting me with your followers.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Stacey Hanke, for joining us. I hope I got that right. I have Frau Holly in my ear thinking about the German pronunciation, so I hope that's right there. But thank you, Stacey, for joining us today. Remember, y'all can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you both.